Joe and told him that the meeting was starting.
Okay. We've got 4, so we should have enough to start.
Yeah.
So before we start, everybody just on the call, this will be recorded. I'm going to start the recording now.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right. I welcome everybody to ACABOR meeting of May the 21st. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. First thing to do, let's take some attendance. Debbie, are you here?
Present.
Sharon?
Present.
Shirley?
Present.
Brian? Absent. Joe? Absent. And Kenyatta? Absent. Chris Dunnigan, present.
Chris,
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
just a suggestion. For those of you who are new to GoToMeeting, if you go in the top left of your desktop, your computer screen where it says GoToMeeting, there's a drop-down menu. You can change your name. So you can name yourself anything you want. I think it would be best as your legal counsel that you use your real name. Debbie, yours says user, and gentleman in that blue shirt, I don't know if he's a member of the board or the public. Hi, how are you? So anyway, I would suggest, for the record, since it is being recorded, that you change your name to your correct name. And there's also a CESO Dayton GoToMeeting. I don't know who that is. Are you a ACABOR member or a member of the public?
I believe that's
okay.
From Amazon, right?
Oh, he may be the applicant. Okay,
Sure.
He may be the applicant. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Chris.
Can you explain? Oh, good.
Go ahead, Joe.
Chris, could you explain how to do that? How to change from user to your name?
Look in the top left of your computer screen, and the very
Right.
top left corner, there's a GoToMeeting logo.
Right.
And
Yes.
there's a drop-down menu. See the down arrow?
Yes.
Click on the down arrow, and I think the very top choice is edit your name and email. Yeah. So just change your name. Just edit your name. That doesn't need to hold up the meeting, Chris. FYI, that you can keep going.
All right. Just an update to the roll call. Joe Malone is here.
Present.
Thank you. All right. Next, we'll lead in the pledge. Shirley was nice enough to bring us a flag. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So before we start, a few ground rules for everybody. I will mute everybody as people go along to avoid people talking over. We will open and as we call out the applicants can unmute themselves individually. After the applicants give their presentation, explain the project, we will go through the board one at a time, unmuting, and I will lead us through that. We will then have a public comment for anybody from the public wishing to speak on any of the applications. During that public comment, I'd ask anybody that's here to speak to direct any comments toward the board, not the applicant. We will limit the length of public comment to roughly 3 minutes. I'll time that on my watch. I'm not gonna cut people off in the middle of their thoughts, but please just be mindful of the time. And then with that, we will start. Our first application of the evening is, I'm going to say the name incorrectly, Amazon delivery station at 200 Ortani Drive. Oh, I muted you, Daniel. I apologize. Still can't hear you, Daniel. You might be muted on your phone, possibly. No.
Chris,
Yes.
is this is by public hearing, right, Cheryl? It's required to be by public, and we should open the public hearing. There should be a motion. I don't know if this is a continuation. Is this the first time on in front of ACABOR?
The first time on, and this board reviews the project first, then opens it up to the public.
Correct.
Oh, the whole thing. Okay, every board does it a little bit differently. I won't go against your custom and tradition. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. All right, Dan, let me try to unmute you here. Not letting me do it.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
All right, I can't hear anybody right now, so I'm trying to figure out my
You're good.
audio. So you can hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
All right, let me go through this and then I'll work on it while Scott does his little presentation after me. So my name is Daniel Patrick. I'm an attorney for Amazon. I'm joined this evening by Scott Ewer and Chad Kapanik of CESO, our design team. First of all, I want to thank you all for accommodating this meeting and holding these virtual meetings. They're troublesome at times, as you can see, because I can't hear anything, but we appreciate moving things along and keeping projects going. And Amazon's excited to join the community, so we thank you. Before I turn over to Scott, I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on the project and where we are. So we're here tonight regarding Amazon's proposed use and occupancy of two structures at 200 and 400 Orangetown. There are two structures located within the Bradley Corporate Park. They're located on the western side of the train tracks in there. It's about a block west of the intersection of Route 303 and Bradley Hill Road. Amazon proposes to use the entire warehouse structure at 200 Orangetown, and for the time being, they're using only the northern portion of the warehouse at 400 Orangetown. They intend to occupy the remainder of the building after the existing tenant's lease expires. The delivery station that will be operated at these two sites will be known as, it operates as a last mile in the distribution network. Basically, packages arrive by semi overnight. They're sorted within the buildings. They're loaded onto smaller delivery trucks or vans, and they're sent out for direct delivery at customers' homes. Amazon received performance standard review approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the proposed use and occupancy earlier this year in January. The applicant has a pending application before the Planning Board, which is on the agenda next Wednesday for a canopy to be constructed between the two buildings, as well as some grading and paving within the parking lots. These items are not the subject of tonight's meeting. These items will come before this board again in June after it goes to the Planning Board. Tonight's items, as Scott will go through in more detail shortly, involve the exterior facades and the minor modifications to the facades. These changes include replacement doors or new door openings, as well as new paint jobs on the buildings. These proposed changes are relatively minor, we believe, and they don't create any significant change to what's existing in the commercial and industrial area that exists there now. We're here to answer any questions, go through our drawings, and show you guys what we're proposing, and hopefully we can answer any questions. Amazon is eager to begin work on the site, so we'd like to we'd like to leave this meeting with the approvals for the proposed work if possible. So, we're here to answer any questions and do whatever we can to address the questions or comments of the board or the public. So I will turn it over to Scott now to go over the more details. I believe he's got some drawings and some visuals he's able to share. So I'll let Scott take it away.
Thank you.
That's correct. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, board, again for meeting with us tonight and making accommodations, certainly during these unusual times. As Dan mentioned, I'm with CESO. We're the project managers for the project for Amazon. So we have performed our company and consultants. So the architect of record is officially Benjamin T. Bell. He's licensed architect in state of New York, and our company is performing project management and coordination of the project in coordination with Mr. Bell. So the license plans that have been submitted or the sign and seal plans have been submitted to the town are in his name, and we are project managers on behalf of Amazon. So the project, and I'm an architect in the state of Ohio, and I'm in charge directly of the Amazon program for CESO, and Chad Haponic, who is also on the line with us tonight, is the project manager in charge of this particular project with Amazon. So we're all working in the same company and representing this project. As our drawings represent, and if I could possibly share the screen, that would be fantastic. I don't know if I need somebody. I think somebody said I need to get permission to do that, or you need to grant that. It says on my screen here.
So you should now be the presenter. You should be able to share.
Okay, I'm going to share that screen right there, I believe. So let me know when you see that. Come up.
Yep. Maybe
Should be seeing a site plan. Okay, great.
Nice.
All right, and as Dan mentioned, I'm not going to get into a lot of great detail with respect to the site, but just to orient everybody for the buildings. 200 Orangetown Drive is the north building and is approximately 76,000 square feet. It's a 33-foot high existing building. I don't believe it's brick. I believe it's actually kind of integrally colored CMU building. And the south building, which is 400 Orangetown, which we'll be presenting in the next application, is the building to the south, and that is located. It's 98,000 square feet and is a 33-foot high building. Neither of the two buildings are changing in square footage with either of these applications. And as Dan had mentioned earlier, the 400 Orangetown building, Amazon is currently only proposing to occupy the northern portion of this building for their warehouse. As a general overview of the use of the site, Amazon is going to be utilizing this northern building, which we'll be discussing in the 200 application, for interior van parking. That is to essentially secure their vehicles to maximize the site as much as possible for parking. And so the vans will be stored in that building through the course of the day. And I will walk you through. This is the existing site plan. I'm going to pull up the proposed site plan, and which is really kind of split into two pieces. Let me pull up this overall site plan to give you some orientation as to what's going on. And the site is rotated from the original the version just to fit it on the sheet here. So Orangetown runs this way, and the 200 building is located here to the north. The 400 building is located here to the south. Ultimately, there's not a whole lot of land disturbance with respect to the site. This parking here to the north of the building here will be primarily just utilized. It's already existing, and it'll just be restriped for van parking. And then this portion of the building here, which is 200, will all be used for van storage. It's currently used for, I believe, vehicle storage and repair in this building. And then the two buildings will be connected through, and again, as Dan had mentioned, with the application that will be in front of the Planning Commission, there will be some minor site work that occurs between these buildings to connect them together functionally and allow the vans to flow from the northern part of the site and be serviced on the, not serviced, but loaded with merchandise that will be coming from the 400 building, processed inside the building and loaded out and loaded into vans, which will then depart the site. So that's kind of an overview of just the site itself. I mean, again, this is for ACABOR, this is really just an application for what we're doing to the exterior of the building. And to keep it simple, which essentially the 200 building relatively is, it's, again, as I mentioned previously, there is no change in height or in the square footage of the building. So we're leaving the footprint completely intact. There is a door here on the, what would be the, essentially the east side of the building. It's kind of hard to orient, but it's really kind of the southeast side of the building here. And Orangetown runs along this way. Okay. The parking lot is over here, and basically the vans would enter the building through an existing overhead door and circulate, park, and then depart through another door that is located here. These are both existing overhead doors, and the only thing that we're doing with these doors is at the interior side of both of them, there will be a high-speed fabric door. So that when the vehicles approach, there will be motion detectors. As the vehicles approach the building, the fabric door goes up very rapidly. And then when the vehicle has cleared through that opening and entered the building, then that door will close down behind it. At the outside face of that door is an overhead coiling door. And that's, if you're not familiar with those, I'll have a picture of that here in a second. But that's just essentially an overhead coiling door that's used for security purposes. So when the building is not being used, pretty much in the overnight hours and later in the evening, those doors would typically be closed and secured so that this fabric door would not be exposed essentially to the elements. Fabric door is pretty much an all-weather door and secures the interior of the building from the elements. We have a couple other doors that are on the building that are not being modified, and those are indicated with the 45-degree swings. So those are on the northeast side of the building, the southeast side of the building, and pretty much as we go around, you can see that there's a door here on the northeast side, overhead door that will not be utilized by Amazon for their purposes. And then there are a few other man doors that are go around the building that are also not going to be, or they'll just be used for egress only. And we are adding one more man door on, I apologize for the expression man door. It's used for, it's a pedestrian door for pedestrian movement, and that's on the northwest corner of the building. And ultimately that'll be used for people that are parking inside the building to be able to walk out through this door and then traverse the site and head over towards the 400 building. So to kind of back out from this a little bit quickly, that door is located right here at this portion of the building. Sorry. That is right here, and they'll come out through this door, and there's new sidewalks and such that are being part of the planning board application that will connect these two buildings and let these people that are essentially van drivers for the delivery service be able to go but communicate between buildings and walk between buildings. Okay. And again, that'll all be part of the planning board application. So for the building itself, again, we're not proposing any change of square footage or a change in height. And essentially all we're really doing is, these are the two doors that are on the the southeast side of the building. Those will have new overhead coiling doors above each of those, which just has a hood, and then it'll have a track on both sides, and it'll be a gray door. All these essentially dark bronze colored doors will all be painted gray. And I'm going to bring up our proposed elevations. So the intent here is to paint the building, and we have the color palette that's proposed here. So this is essentially what the overhead door looks like, and it's a utilitarian door that is similar to what you'll have even with a loading docks that are on the 400 building that allow the door to go up and down, weather tight the building, secure the building. And that will be gray in color, so that'll be kind of harmonious with the proposed color scheme of the building. The building itself will primarily be this nebulous white color for, I would say, 90% of the building. And then the top of the building, at the very top of it, there is a band that will be approximately 4 feet deep that will go all the way around the building. And that is painted it's a Pantone color. Amazon refers to it as prime blue. That is kind of matches their branding for their kind of coloration that they have on, as in their logo and such. So that is for identification and branding of the building. And then the gray matters color is essentially what the doors, the man doors themselves will be painted. And again, those are and the doors that are the overhead doors would be matching that as well. Okay. So essentially that is what we're doing with this 200 building. And then there is some proposed signage on the building, which will be part of a separate application, but we're showing it here for illustration purposes only. That is not currently part of this application. That will be, again, sought by the signage vendor as a separate permit. So with that said, I guess I'll open it to the board to see if there are any questions regarding the application and the intent here. But essentially, we're talking about a couple doors that are already existing on that southeast side, which will just have some new doors put in there for security purposes, and then painting the existing 3'0" by 7'0" hollow metal doors, painting those that matters color, most of the building being white, and then the top band being blue.
Thank you, Scott. A few points of clarification and a question. So for this specific application, the only thing that we are addressing here is essentially the change in paint colors, the change in the door colors. The other things that we referenced in terms of connecting the building are not being considered. That's a future plan. We're only considering the colors, correct? And the change of the exterior of this building.
Yes, that's correct. And we had made application to the building department, and in discussions with the building department, we actually have a number of packages that have been submitted. So
okay.
at the building department's request, we have made a separate
Thank you. I just
200
want to
building as well as the 400 building, and they address only the exterior improvements, which are essentially the door openings as well as the paint. So yes, that's correct.
So, and then the other question I have is, I think you covered where the nebulous white was going to be, or that was going to be the main building. Gray matters were going to be both the coil doors and the person doors. The prime blue is going to be the top ribbon. I didn't catch where Midnight Dream was going to go, or is Midnight Dream not part of this?
Yeah, I should clarify that a little bit. We probably put that color on here. That is used on the 400 building. I do not believe we will have any applications of Midnight Dream in this particular case. So we have it. This will be a 3-color scheme. The gray matters for the doors, for the person doors, the nebulous white, and the prime blue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go through the rest of the board and unmute people individually. Hold on. Hold on. 1 second while I figure out how to use this again. Debbie, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, actually, no.
Sharon, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, so I do. The blue branding that's going to go around the whole entire building, do we know if that's going to be visible at all to the streets behind, like Sergeant DiMiola? This might have more impact for the other building, but yeah, I was just wondering whether or not, it'll make the building stand out even more from that residential street.
I mean, believe the building, I mean, there is some visibility from adjacent properties, but I think there's a pretty substantial landscape buffer that is provided between the buildings. Again, I don't think it's going to be so much front and center. I guess I can't testify to that effect, but I do believe there's visibility. I mean, certainly the colors are more, you know, the blue is there, but I don't think it's going to be, it's not a garish color. It just, again, identifies the building for customers that do come to the building to pick up packages and such. And that's the 400 building, but it's pretty much a branding element like most companies will have.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not the branding is needed at the back part of the building, if it needs to be on all four sides. I just think that the building and that any part of the building that is visible from these residential streets, we need to keep the building as less of as obtrusive, right?
Okay.
I really don't think it makes a big impact for this building. I think the other building, and I don't know, you'll tell us whether or not it's going to go all around, because I think that the other building, there is more of a sight from Demiola.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Sharon.
And hey, I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't have familiarity with everybody's name. I was mistaken in the Midnight Dream, so I do want to mention that the top of the coping that's at the very top of the building, that gets painted Midnight Dream. So we get the blue band, and then right above, underneath at the very top, that coping gets the Midnight Dream. So it kind of caps the building with essentially this charcoal colored band at the very top. I apologize. So we are using all those colors.
Thank you for correcting.
And again, that'll be, that fascia is probably somewhere in the range of, I don't know the exact dimensions, but typically the coping is going to be somewhere from 4 to 6 inches or somewhere. It's about the size of a block horse at the most, I would imagine. I can probably zoom into this photo to see, but that's essentially at the very top. And it's pretty much the color that it is right now. I think it's probably bronze color right now, but it'll be painted essentially the Midnight Dream color at the very top.
Okay, thank you. Shirley, any questions for the applicant?
Not at this point in time.
Thank you. Joe, any questions for the applicant?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Miata, I'm trying to unmute you, but it won't let me, so you might have to unmute yourself. There you go. Any questions?
No
Any-
questions, but a comment. I think I second Sharon. Like, I think we need to be cognizant as to whether or not that blue is going to be more of a standout color for the residents. I don't know if there's any way to know how the landscaping is done where it won't be seen, but it would be a bright color. I don't know that, you know, I think it should be considered.
Thank you. So Scott, listening and hearing from the board about that particular color band, particularly on the side of the building that is facing, I guess it would be northeastish. I'm looking at this right. And basically the step side of that building that's facing those residential areas. Would you guys, consider on this particular building not painting that blue stripe on that backside and only having it on the front-facing sides that are facing into Ortani Drive, the Bradley Hill area, and then in between the buildings, and of course against the railroad tracks, where I'm certain it's not that big of a deal.
I think it's it's difficult. I can't at this juncture really offer that on behalf of my client. I don't really have that latitude, but I guess the one thing that I would offer is that certainly one thing that we want to walk away from with tonight on both of these buildings is any type of approval or conditional approval that maybe even if anything tables this discussion regarding the paint for a future consideration, or that maybe if that becomes a condition. So as we're facing this in the building kind of stair steps as we come through here, are we kind of referring to, and I can draw this on here, and maybe what I can do is take that back for consideration to our client and say if they're willing essentially to, are we referring, let me just draw this and then I'll make this bold as I get this kind of stair step expressed here.
I see your email. I don't know if that's what you're intending to share or not, but.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I moved my screen over. That doesn't help.
Okay.
I was trying to get this in the spot because my webcam's over here. So I'm kind of like looking at the side of everybody's face, or they're probably looking at the side of my face, which is, all right. Anyway, so I highlighted that on the plan. So that would seemingly be the part that faces the residential areas of concern, correct? This kind of stair step facade. So there's
Correct.
really not one elevation. I mean, it is kind of one elevation, but it's this whole exposure. Is that what we're, if we were to say that and we were to paint the building all of the other colors, but then omit this blue stripe in this area, would that please the board?
I think that's the preference. Sharon, just confirm if that's where you're referring to as well.
Yes.
And Kenyatta, same location.
Yes.
Okay. I think I can certainly, if we could, say that the other three sides or primary exposures of the building would be painted with the prime blue, I think that's something that they could certainly entertain. And if we could get, I'm not sure how the process would work. I mean, if we basically, if you're granting approval with this to be painted white and the balance of the building to be painted white with the blue, I think that's something that we would certainly accept as an approval. And then what we do, come back and appeal. If I really don't think that Amazon is going to say, oh, we absolutely need to have this side of the building painted blue. Again, from your point, from approaches to the building and such, that seems to be a secondary facade from our perspective. So I think that would be acceptable.
So I think the process and Cheryl and or Dennis can correct me. We would give an approval with the condition that building would be painted white only, and that's what you'd be allowed to do. If you were to want to do a different color there, you would have to come back with a separate application to change that. The alternative would be that you request a continuance of this meeting and you come back after you've spoken with your client.
Yeah, I do believe that our building permit applications and the approval there is somewhat contingent, and the ability for Amazon to move forward with construction is contingent upon ACABOR approval tonight. So I would offer that we would accept any motion and approval making that a contingency to that, or making that a condition of the approval to change that to match the balance, the nebulous white, omitting the blue along this stair-stepped area. And I would also, for clarification, we can paint the coping, the Midnight Dream, correct, at the very, very top, so that's
Right.
continuous all the way around. That's correct, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I think it's just the blue.
Yeah, I would say that, I would say that would be the approval that we would be looking for, as opposed to any kind of continuance, for sure.
Okay. That's helpful. You say something, Cheryl?
Oh, that's fine. If they want to change it eventually, and they have to come back for an amendment.
Okay. Duly noted.
Perfect. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Scott. At this point, we will open for public comment. I would ask, since looking at the participant list, everybody is through the GoToMeeting tool, that if you are wishing to speak, to put a message in the chat requesting just a name, saying, hey, my name's X, I'd like to speak. And then we will call, will call people by name as they appear in that chat. So I'll give people a little while to do that. And if for some reason you're not able to get to the chat, in a minute or so, I will just ask somebody to unmute themselves if they wish to speak. But please try and put your name in the chat first. Not seeing anybody here yet. So I will unmute all and ask, is there anybody wishing from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please speak up now. Hearing none, not seeing anybody wave hands either through the chat. The public portion is closed. Members of the board, feel free to unmute yourself. Do we have a motion to approve this application with the condition that I believe it is northeast wall that is staggered, highlighted here in red, is to be painted white without the blue stripe?
I'll make the
I
motion.
make a motion to approve the application with the condition of no blue stripe on the back.
Hold on. I'm going to stop. Daniel, I can see you waving your hand, but I can't hear you. I'm sorry, Shirley.
All right.
While we wait for Daniel, Shirley, sorry, Chris, permission to speak. Shirley, just specify, as Chris did, using compass points is always most accurate. The location where the condition is going to be applicable, the removal of the blue paint, just try to be as specific as possible.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you. Chris,
yes.
While we wait for Daniel, I see somebody wrote west wall there. Is that would be a good specific locator? Is that the where you said the staggered, highlighted in red or inked in red? Is that the area we're talking about?
That is it. Correct.
All right. So just use those reference points. And also, I think you said, was it southeast corner?
As I see west wall, I realize that I did a poor job with my compass points here, and it is actually the northwest.
Yeah, there's the north arrow. So right, it would be the northwest. Got that, Shirley?
I do.
All right, excellent.
Dan, I see you're unmuted. You're at least green now. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, right, fantastic. That's what I was going to clarify. I was going to say that's the northwest side of the building.
Thank
you.
My apologies.
Thank you. No.
So Shirley, you made a motion. Would you like to clarify it and be specific, please?
I would, Chris. I would like to make a motion to approve the application with the condition that the northwest wall, highlighted in red on the plan, be painted without the blue stripe.
Thank you, Shirley.
So that the wall is in nebulous white and the coping is in midnight dream.
Thank you, Shirley. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sharon has seconded. We will do a roll call vote. Debbie?
Aye.
Thank you, Sharon.
Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Kenyatta?
Aye.
And Chris? Aye. All right. Thank you, Scott and Dan. This one is approved. You're good to go here. Our next application is for Amazon delivery at 400 Orangetown Drive. So I'll let you guys take it from here again.
But I will save you guys my technical difficulties and just let Scott walk you through the plans. Same spiel as before. We're here, mostly concentrating tonight. The main goal is the functionality of the building, so the doors, anything that needs to be used, and we can certainly discuss any questions regarding paint. So, Scott, please take it away.
If it pleases the board, which I think it will, or I hope it will, I'm going to keep it brief as well and not go through the reiteration of the site and the connection and the function of the buildings and how they work together. I will jump to essentially the functional considerations of what we're proposing with the building itself, and what we're proposing. So again, the south building, the 400 building, is it's an existing building, approximately 98,434 square feet, 33 feet in height. It is a masonry building and is a CMU masonry building. The existing floor plan, I will show you. Amazon is proposing to take over the northern section of the building. Why I wish I had the exact square footage here in front of me, but I don't have that at my fingertips to how much they're going to occupy, but they're going to occupy essentially the northern half of the building as it faces the 200 property. Amazon's intent for this building is to essentially utilize and again, I'm going to give you some orientation here. This is essentially north here. So this over here, it's kind of tough because yes, this is southeast side over here. This is the northeast side. This is essentially the west side here as this stair step kind of faces west. And then this is the adjacent tenant, which is, I believe, a moving company, which occupies essentially the southern, maybe third of the building that is remaining. Amazon intent, the southeast side of the building currently is a loading dock configuration. So looking at the site plan, I'll just apologize for bouncing around a little bit. But this portion of the building is an existing truck court with a number of overhead doors and stairs that face in this direction. And again, orientation wise, that's essentially southeast towards Orangetown Drive. And again, Amazon will be taking over this portion of the building. I think it's to approximately here, if I'm not mistaken. So substantial part of the building, but not obviously the entire portion of the building. Going to the floor plan itself, let me bounce to that. We're proposing some minor reconfiguration of some existing loading dock doors that occur here. Amazon may end up replacing these doors if they don't meet the functional requirements, but they'll be replaced essentially in kind. They're overhead sectional doors like you would see like a typical garage door. I believe they're 9 feet wide by 10 feet high. And the proposal here in Amazon's portion of the building, which is from column line 7.5 to column line 1, is to have a total of 10 loading dock doors on this portion of the building. All these existing stairs that are here right now essentially will remain, and all these doors that are here, these pedestrian doors, will be for egress purposes only. One of them will be used for truck driver access into the interior of the building. There is a portion of the building that is existing. There's some office areas here on this portion of the building, and those interior offices are being demolished as part of the interior improvements package. But there are some small openings to the exterior, window openings, which will be removed and replaced with dock doors, more essentially in kind with what we already see on that facade of the building. And then there's a portion here where there's an existing loading dock door that will be infilled with concrete masonry, as Amazon is also constructing some restrooms, remote restrooms, as required by code over in this corner of the building for due to remoteness. Again, that all being part of the interior application process. So really on this facade, only it's going to be remain pretty similar to what you already see out there currently. Just some minor reconfiguration of some doors on that facade. On what is the northeast facade, in order for, like I said, the packages come into the building through tractor trailers, they get sorted, and as Dan had mentioned earlier on the 200 application, there are the northeast side of the building between 200 and 400 will be for loading packages into delivery vans. So in order to accommodate that, there are 3 overhead sectional doors. Again, they're overhead overhead coiling doors on the exterior face, and then the high-speed fabric doors will be on the interior face. And those essentially the coiling doors will be wide open during the day, and then the fabric doors will be used, and they fast act and go up and down once people approach those doors to kind of keep the interior space conditioned as much as possible, as opposed to a slow moving door that doesn't quite work to that effect. And there will be 3 of these doors. They're 12 feet wide and 10 feet high for the purposes of moving packages from inside the building to the exterior of the building. On the west-facing facade, which was also what was kind of brought up in the 400 application, I'll bounce to this. So that is, or the 200 application. This is the west-facing facade that faces an existing parking lot that is currently here. This will have some minor configuration. Again, that will be in front of Planning Commission. Again, not part of this application. But this portion of the building was designed, we believe, for kind of a multi-tenant situation where each of these stair steps would essentially could have been slated for a separate entrance into the building. So each of these approaches to the building, there's a sidewalk and some steps, and there's some storefront at each of these sawtooth entrances, essentially. And we're proposing, as I will show you in this overall plan, some minor configuration of these facades here. So there's an entrance feature here, which is used for what we refer to as the Amazon hub, and I'll get here to that in a minute. This is a portion of the building that is, I believe, going to be a future conference room or training room inside the building. Actually, this will be training. So we're putting some additional storefront, aluminum storefront openings into the building here for daylighting. And again, that should help improve the facade aesthetics here because we're adding more glazing. Here is the associate entrance, which is again reconfiguration of the aluminum storefront. It will match the existing storefront that's currently out there now, which I believe is bronze anodized, or again, whatever coloration that is, it will match what's already out here in these other openings that exist in the building. And then we're also punching in a couple more storefront openings on this facade, and I'll show you the elevations here in a second. There is a portion here in this, I believe this is the warehouse over in this location, where we are essentially sealing up an existing man door. Again, I apologize, pedestrian door. It'll just be closed off and locked. It's not needed for egress purposes. And that's at this location. And then as you get all the way over here, this is another existing storefront opening with an existing pedestrian door to come to the exterior. This one will be used and essentially used for egress purposes only out of the warehouse. Actually, I think this door is used for the delivery service drivers with card access to get into the building to check in with the delivery service managers there. So this is essentially, again, southeast facade, overhead door modifications. The northeast side is 3 overhead doors, 12 feet by 10 feet. And the western facade in this sawtooth area will be primarily just modifications of existing storefront and the addition of some additional glazing. I will show you very quickly some of the existing visuals that are there now. This is the western facing facade into this parking lot. So this is the sawtooth area that's in question, and you can see in these are essentially a typical storefront opening that occurs at these locations. There's essentially probably about 3 feet high or so. There's a sill here, and then there's aluminum storefront with the door entry, and that occurs at each one of these pretty much sawtooth indents to the building. As I was kind of identifying on the plan, those are like here and here and here as you kind of march along the building towards the south. This is the side of the building where these are existing overhead doors and the egress doors that are going to be maintained. These are these 2 little openings. They're essentially, I think, window openings, and those will be replaced with essentially overhead doors that look just like these. So there's not going to be that much dramatically changing on this facade that's going to be that noticeable to the naked eye. And then on this side, I think this is where we'll have the 3 overhead doors facing this parking lot, which will ultimately be modified. This is another view as you would be looking at what is the hub entrance. And again, the hub is essentially it's essentially a self-service location where a customer may order a package from Amazon and elect to not have it delivered to their home. So they would show up to the site. They would kind of register through the app, and then the app would tell them, okay, your package is going to be available for the next 15 minutes. They drive to the site. They park in the parking lot right here in front of the building. They approach the building, and then they're given access to get into the building. And the locker that has their package in it essentially unlocks, and they're able to retrieve their package and then depart from the site. It's literally probably a 2-minute transaction that occurs there. And then this associate entrance here is going to be, the storefront's going to be modified here with new storefront. And there are some minor canopy features. They are about 4 feet off the building and as wide as the storefront that's being added in there. And I'll show you again these facades or these proposed elevations. And this is where we'll be having the new storefront here for the training room, as well as over here. And I'll show you those elevations right now. So this is the facade with the loading docks. We're also proposing a canopy feature over the 5 dock doors that are going to be utilized. Amazon's only going to use 5 of these dock doors. The rest of these will be essentially locked in place, but they'll all be matching. They only need 5 of them for their operation, and they have to be all together in order for this to function properly. So again, this is the southeast facade here, and this is essentially the northwest elevation. And again, as we mentioned before, the building, or at least Amazon's lease area of the building, will be painted white, or the nebulous white, with the blue band and the proposed Midnight Dream coping. The hub feature itself will have the masonry surrounding it also painted that Midnight Dream, and this is just at the pedestrian level. So as we kind of mentioned earlier, yes, there's some visibility to the site, but as you get lower grades, I don't think that you're going to really see these features that much, because they should be obstructed by the landscape and the vegetation that buffers between the Amazon site and the adjacent residences. And these are branding elements. I will show you here in a second kind of a rendering of what those look like. But this is essentially the Amazon hub. Proposed signage will be part of another application, and then there's a small canopy feature again that it's about 4 feet off the building, and that's over the pickup, as well as the associate entrance. And then this is your storefront opening here, and these are the new storefront openings here that kind of that will match these other storefront openings on the site. Okay. Again, the color palette's the same. Again, the proposal is to paint Amazon's lease area. As Amazon does not currently control the whole building, we'll be painting here up to this point, and only Amazon's portion of the building. So I think and let me bounce to this for 1 second. This is kind of essentially what this Amazon Hub feature looks like on their prototypical build to suit building. So it has that Midnight Dream kind of brackets the entrance, and then the prime blue canopy accentuates the entrance so that there's easy wayfinding. And we actually feel that these are important elements to essentially draw attention to the entrances. So those are definitely items that we are pushing for the approval on. And this is a rendering of what a recently built site looks like, but this is pretty different from the one that we're proposing here, because this is a metal building where some of these elements, at least, were adapted to this particular site, but the proportions and the colors are a little bit different. Well, the colors are pretty much the same, except this doesn't have the Midnight Dream around it, but this does have the prime blue surround, the gray canopy that we're proposing up here above the associate entrance, and then the hub entrance. And that's essentially what we'd be looking to ultimately get approved as a signage piece, but again, not part of this application. Okay. So I think that's probably adequate to describe, and I'll just open it to any questions you may have. We'll just take it from there.
Okay. If you flip back to, if you go back to number 5 there with the the one bottom right corner, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
So just to clarify, the picture of the below of the existing site, that's roughly representing what the colors, the nebulous white and the blue, prime blue, and yep. I can't remember what the other gray. That's accurate for fall.
Yeah, I believe this down here was the nebulous white, so it's definitely a much more pronounced white color. I think this was the gray. That we're not using. I mean, we're using it in other elements, but that's the gray matters on this particular site. But this site had and actually this one down here, this was existing brick masonry on this building, which was very close to the nebulous white. So we actually didn't even paint this on this facade. But I don't want to misrepresent that. But yes, this was kind of in many ways close enough to the color scheme that we just left it as it was. So.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna open it up to board members, going the same order we went last time. Debbie, any questions for the applicant?
Chris, I'm pretty much in agreement with Kenyatta and Sharon on the color schemes of the buildings, although I do realize that these are branding colors, so there's not much that the board is usually permissible to say much about that. But I really prefer the muted colors to what's being presented. So I don't have any other than I'm just overall not really pleased by the brightness of all of this. I prefer the building the way it was and the colors that it is already being presented as it's being presented now.
I think that's
so could we submit that we or at least appeal that we present and get a conditional approval to, again, on this facade, similar to what we did with the 400 building, is eliminate prime blue at the top. And again, it really would be my belief, again, I don't have a sight line study to show you that, but again, these elements are pretty low. And
I think by the time we get through, let's get through the rest of the board. I suspect that will be a similar request like we've done the last one. But let's let the rest of the board speak too.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's all right. In person, it's a little bit easier. I would let that go, but here is a little tougher. Sharon, any comment?
I do have a question regarding the hub. So the hub will actually, I think, if I've gotten this correctly, be facing the residential street, Sergeant DeMiola. And I realize it's a lot more than just that blue stripe that we're talking about with the branding. We're talking about a big Amazon sign that they're going to see directly through. My concern is more with this building than with the other building. The other building has a lot more landscaping, a lot more coverage. But this building does not. There's homes that you literally see right into their backyard. I think it's going to be, and it was really tough for them when this building was built, and now it's a brick and it kind of blends in. But now we're painting it and we're putting branding on it. It's becoming a storefront. You know, I really think it's a real loss for this block in terms of, you know, it's going to impact the value of their homes, I think. I mean, am I correct? Is the hub actually facing this residential street?
Yes, this feature here is facing, and again, it's located. It's probably 10% of the facade area, and again, being pretty low slung.
And I guess my other question was, we're talking about painting portion of this or majority of this building will be, you know, Amazon painted, but then the other portion is going to stay its existing brick?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I think you know, originally Amazon was going to have the entire building, but in the lease terms right now, I believe that's ultimately what they plan to do is occupy the entire building. Once we have lease negotiations and or the current tenant, if they do vacate, then Amazon's ultimate plan is to occupy the whole building. At which time, and it's possible. I mean, again, even here, if it's, I don't want to say if it pleases the board to maybe not even paint this facade or to make it a condition that the whole facade gets painted. I think it's possible that we can, you know, I understand the concern about a portion of the building, and I just don't know that the Amazon has had discussions with the landlord about the possibility of painting the entire building to unify it so that it does appear as one. Certainly, I think Amazon would be open to that if that were a condition of the approval to say either we want it to be all or we want it to be nothing as it faces this direction. That's something that we can potentially entertain as a condition, or would suggest as a condition, if you will. Again, our primary concern with this meeting tonight is being able to walk away with the functional approval of the elements and being able to do the facade work that needs to be done primarily for the functional elements. So the addition of the storefront so that the building can function, the addition of these overhead doors here so that they can move merchandise, because if this doesn't get approved, then they can't function in the building, which could be impactful to ultimately their lease with the landlord. If these elements, if they can't work, and obviously the associates need to be able to get into the building, and all these were, again, all of these portions, these stair steps here were intended to be forward facing and parking lot facing entrances. I don't know if the landlord's intent at one point in time was to be able to have these as storefronts, or if this was really intended to be essentially unbranded. You know, when he was leasing these spaces, or when this building was kind of built as presumably as a spec building, that this might end up with some sort of signage or something each. And again, that would be something that somebody would come to the board with, or to the town with, is to say, okay, we're going to be, you know, Bob's Sign Shop, or, you know, each of these tenants in a speculative building might presumably have some sort of branding or identification, so that when somebody parks in this lot, they would have some identification. This is not dissimilar from that, and I would submit that this building might have intended to have a lot more signage and branding and identification than what's being proposed. So again, for your consideration, I don't have any knowledge of the previous application and how this was submitted, but I would put that out there.
Understood. I mean, we have to look at this application, however, in the light of it itself.
Sure.
intent of something that happened prior, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
If I could chime in quickly, just regarding the, can you hear me? First of all? Perfect. All right. Regarding the visibility from that side of the building, our prior ZBA approval earlier this year was conditioned on increasing the vegetated buffer between the existing residences and that side of the building. So what's there now is not going to, the existing buffer that's there right now is going to be increased based on the condition of the prior approval. I've also heard from the landlord that, you know, they would be okay with painting the entire building in the future if it would, you know, assuming there's no issues with the existing lease, that's not an issue.
So, and I apologize, I'm going to take us a little off plan here for a second. I apologize, Shirley, and the rest of the board. So to that point, Daniel, you know, if that ZBA approval is conditional on that, do we have a landscape plan that will address that requirement so we can understand exactly how that landscape screening is going to affect this? They really should have been together, I guess. As similar.
I know there was a landscape plan submitted as a condition that's been submitted already. I'm not sure, Scott, if you have a copy of that.
Chris, you might be seeing that when it comes in for site plan review at the June 4th meeting.
Okay.
I'd have to take a look.
Got it. So that's going to come when they do the site changes and they go to the planning board then, Cheryl. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm trying to pull that up right now. I'm pulling up that application.
So I would say let's not get ahead of, if that's going to come up in a separate application, let's not pull that up now to confuse us, I guess, for lack of a better description, right? I think if that's something that's going to, we have to look at the plan as it is in front of us today, regardless of what the future might hold here. Okay. Sharon, anything else before I move on to Shirley?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Shirley, it won't let me unmute you. I'm sorry. There you go. Any questions or thoughts for the applicant, Shirley?
I just have a statement. I don't find that the blue is really that distracting. If you look at the plan, the picture is a much brighter blue than in reality when you see it on the building. And the color is probably going to fade over time, and it very much matches the sky color. I think that blue will blend more than it appears to on the plan when it is in reality on the building. Is that clear?
Yep. So, a good point, Shirley. I noticed that too. Anything else on that one, Shirley, before I go on to Joe, or was that?
No, and I'm sure the extra, I would say the extra landscaping is certainly going to help as well. That blue square is not going to look like the sky. It's a totally different representation.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, any comments or questions?
No, everything was answered. Thank you.
Okay. And let's see. I can't unmute you either, Kenyatta. There you go. Any questions or comments to the applicant, Kenyatta?
No.
So coming back, I mean, I want to go back and touch on something, Scott, that you had mentioned. So given where this side of the building is, I tend to agree with Sharon and Debbie about how this particular side of the building really does affect that neighborhood on the cul-de-sac. You know, there's a few houses who literally cannot not see this building. I do tend to agree with them that, you know, having the building half one color, half the other color is really going to be a bit of a detriment there. But going back to a comment that you made, it sounded like you would be willing to forego changing this side of the building specifically to move forward with this plan. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, I would start as a baseline in order for this building to be kind of also consistent with the approval on the 200 application, is that perhaps, and it, as offer up as Dan has mentioned, that if he had approached the landlord, that this balance of the building would also be painted, or could also be painted. I guess we would appeal or suggest that or seek in a conditional approval that says the balance of the building be painted. I would go so far as to say that if we would paint this building and omit the prime blue band, that we would at least be consistent between this building and the 200 building, so that will cause less attention again to the building itself, and that this would primarily just be the nebulous white with the Midnight Dream cap on the top of it on this west facing towards the residence facade. And again, I think what we'd like to see is a consistency of what we're doing with the building, so that they don't become disjointed. And certainly we would, I know that Amazon would be willing to paint the balance of this building if that became a condition of the approval that said, okay, let's at least on this facade say it's going to be all or nothing, so that we don't get part of the building painted a certain way and then another part of the building remaining. I don't want to frame your discussion as to what you would approve, but those are suggestions that I'm kind of offering, that if we could move towards a conditional approval of painting the whole balance of the building with the color palette, and that would include this facade in its entirety with the blue band, and then everything kind of facing residences potentially towards the west here, and possibly even the south, because I think the residences come around this way, do they not?
A little bit.
That maybe this facade here does not get the blue banding as well, but the primary facades that have visibility off of Oratani do get the blue banding. And if we could paint the balance of the building with the white and the Midnight Dream coping, that's what we would I guess offer or request. And again, I think these elements, again, I'd like to see if we can get this approved in this color palette, recognizing that the height of these things is only, this is about 10, 12 feet high right here to the bottom side of this. So it's not a big soaring feature. So we move toward or request that if possible.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to public comments here. So I would ask that if you're here from the public wishing to speak on this application, that you throw your name in the chat. And if we don't get anybody in about 30 seconds or so, I'll unmute everybody and ask again. But I would request that anybody wishing to speak on this matter from public, just send a message in the chat, please. Not seeing anybody yet. I'm gonna unmute everybody who who I can. Is there anybody from the public to speak on this application? Please speak up now. I'm hearing none, and I'm not seeing any hand either. Public portion is closed. Okay.
I have a question. Jane sent around a memo this afternoon, and I sent it to everybody. She wanted you to look at the, besides the awnings over the entrances, there's also over the loading docks between columns 2 and 4.5. So she wanted to know, what's happening with those things.
Scott, can you speak to that and what that's going to look like, how that's going to be painted, colored, etc.?
Sorry, it was muted there. Yeah, so that will be painted. It's just basically a standing seam metal canopy. I think it projects about 4 feet off the building. Let me see if I can find a quick representation of that. But again, that'll be that the color of that will be this gray matters. and this may take me a moment to bring up something representative of this. I apologize. But it's essentially just to provide coverage over these doors to prevent, to provide additional weather coverage of those doors as the trucks back up to them. I certainly apologize. I don't have it right here at my fingertips, but if you have other questions, let me see if I can entertain those.
No,
If there were any.
take your time. Let's find that, and let's close that question up. Well, we can wait a second here. And thank you for that reminder, Cheryl. Appreciate it.
Again, what I'm going to be bringing up is a really basic depiction of that. In this particular case, this will show this particular case, it's actually painted prime blue, but we're not doing that. But it essentially looks like it's a really small canopy that projects off the building. In this rendition, it's a it's prime blue, but we're proposing it to be gray on this facade. And that's just kind of a rendering. I don't really have a.
So looking at that, that's I'll call it a triangular awning.
Correct.
And that's going to be the same shape and look as the one that's going to be on this building. Because what it looks like on the plan is almost looks like it's just a rectangle that's pushed out.
Yeah, it will be like a shed. So, I mean, you see a lot of retail buildings have just a small canopy over their entrance features to protect people from when they're entering the building from getting rained on. That's essentially what this canopy does at these loading dock doors. And again, I apologize. I don't have a whole lot of detail on it that I can show you. I can find something that gives me a little bit more detail quickly. I'm trying to get my hands on it. But I think it's like maybe 4 or 5 feet off the building. One more second here. Probably be able to pull this up here. That's not the sheet I was looking for. Not the one. Getting close, maybe. Oh, for heaven's sakes. My lucky day.
Yeah, that's how Murphy's Law, right?
It is, of course. Always. Huh. I would have thought that was on that sheet, but it's not. There it is. I mean, this is a good, thank you, Chad. This is probably a decent representation of what that would look like. But just more linear and just gray.
And Cheryl, since that's not on the plans that we got, do we need to have that sent to us so we've got a representation of it? For the
Yes. Yes, we need that.
Okay. Does the board have the latitude to approve something on the condition upon receipt and then staff review, or does that need to be, how does that get addressed?
Scott, one quick question. I'm going through the plans that were submitted. Is the awning shown on page A710? I believe it's the dock door canopy section.
Yeah, it's probably there. I apologize.
It's not colored, but it's, at least show the dimensions of it. Maybe address some questions.
Thank you, Dan. My apologies to the board.
Okay.
Submit.
A710, you said, right, Dan? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I see it. And it matches.
6.
That's it right here.
Perfect. Okay.
So it projects out 4 feet. from the building. Thank you, Dan, Savior. 12 to 12 pitch, 4 feet, and essentially this just sits right above the canopy or above the overhead doors. And again, it's provided for weatherproofing, and it's essentially just a it's a mansard and standing seam panels, not dissimilar from what I had brought up in that chat window like this. That's essentially the visual of it. And again, standing seam metal roof, and would be the gray matters color, and that's the profile of it.
Okay, thank you. So what I think I'm going to do here next is, it sounds like from hearing the different members of the board make a suggestion and then just go through the board and poll them on whether they have any thoughts on this or if they agree with it. So it sounds like, given what we've seen, the main concern is that western wall, and it feels like from hearing the board, pulling that blue off to be consistent with 200 is one thing we'd like to add as a condition, and the second being that either that whole back wall is painted or none of it's painted, similar to how you had suggested. Debbie, would you be okay with that?
I prefer the consistency of both buildings and each side of those buildings to be consistent with one another. And I go back to my original comment, which was I prefer the buildings to stay in the neutral tones for which they are. The doorways with the blue around them are not as concerning to me as a whitewashed building which stands out in this area, and it's irrelevant what kind of landscaping they provide, because no barrier is going to be able to cover the height and, how do you say, prevent us from seeing this white building, which is very stark. So I go back to leaving the buildings the neutral colors that they are, and if you want to put your logo colors and your company colors on your doors there, that's what I'm fine with. But I think that, like, again, just this big wall of white is just overpowering, and it really does bust up the residential neighborhood feeling there, because it's just too in your face.
So your preference would be to not paint this building?
Not painted at all. I'm not opposed to the blue. I don't like the blue all the way around the building, but I don't mind it. I think it's fine around the doorways and the gray. And I think that that's where their colors representing Amazon should be displayed. But the whole building doesn't need to be representative of the color white and blue around it. Not in that area.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Sharon?
I totally agree. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay. Shirley? You're on mute, Shirley.
You can hear me now?
You can hear you now.
Chris, I find your suggestions acceptable. I think the building now looks rather dirty and drab, and I don't think the white's going to stay pure white for very long, considering how much dust I saw around there. And the blue will fade, and there'll be additional landscaping.
Thank you, Shirley. Joe?
I would agree to paint both buildings, but that they match, that one wall would, we disregard the blue on that one wall. But as long as they're painted exactly the same, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And Kenyatta?
I'm with Debbie on the consistency, and I think just doing the blue elements around the doors as opposed to the whole building.
I tend to lean, given to where this building is and the close proximity to some of those houses, I tend to agree with Debbie, Sharon, and Kenyatta that painting this building a whitewashed color is really going to be detrimental to the values of those houses that can see nothing but this building. You know, I do agree that from a landscaping perspective, it's going to be very, very difficult to block this. You know, white is just a very stark color outside of the middle of winter for that particular residential area. When you've got a brown or a neutral earth tone color, it blends much better into that background that is, you know, the state parks when you know, those people are driving up their driveways, sitting on their back decks. So what I would say here is based on just the polling that we've got here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 6 of us who are not in agreement with the way that this building is being painted at the moment. You know, and again, it comes down to there's a difference in this building and the other building based on the proximity to some of the houses, existing, you know, forestry and buffer zones there. So my ask to the applicants here would be to go back and see what other options there are for this building to make it branded from an Amazon perspective, because I understand that's what they need to do, but without impacting those residents that are looking at this building 24/7 as much as this white is going to do. I mean, it's up to you guys what you do, but that's.
If I can kind of.
Offer something here, at least as a suggestion. And again, it's also an appeal to some sort of conditional approval, because again, our building permit application and the ability for Amazon to ultimately occupy, to perform exterior modifications to the building from a functional perspective, that obviously is our serious primary objective that we have tonight, so that we can ultimately obtain building permit from the town. We would seek at least a conditional approval of the functional elements of the door additions, the functional pieces themselves, to have the storefront where we want it, or we're requesting it to be, the entrance features, dock door modifications, the modifications on the northeast facade for the overhead doors there too. So I would almost, if at all, request that we almost strip the application of the color considerations, if at all possible, to say that if we could get an approval that says, okay, we don't even paint the building, or we have the option to paint. I don't want to make, there's been no motion and there's been no ultimate vote on it, but I certainly want to make sure that it has tiers to it that give us some option to move forward with some element of approval, so that we can, if nothing else, it's the color of the building that is left to be determined. I would then also further request that if because we already had a motion and an approval on 200, we certainly don't want 200 to be different than 400. We also don't want to necessarily be, I'd say, painted into a corner, but by the approval that was already granted for 200, I would almost say that we certainly would like to not paint 200 if we don't get approval on 400, because we don't want to be forced to paint and I'm sure the board would feel the same way. And I know you can't maybe retract a motion on 200, but to throw it out there that we go in with the functional approvals, possibly even the branding elements of the Amazon hub and the associate entrance, because they're minor statements compared to the major concern of the white and the blue for sure, and that the recoloration of the building, that perhaps maybe we even walk away with that component approved of the entrance features and the proposed colors, so that maybe we're at least kind of walking away with that. I'm just framing that so that if you have a motion, that we have it in layers, if nothing else, so that we can kind of certainly move forward with building permit application and granting building permits. So I'll throw that out there for the consideration of the board.
Scott, I agree. I think the functionality is key at this point. We would certainly like to see some sort of approval on the condition that we come back to settle the issue regarding the color and the painting, and we can even provide more details as far as the buffering at that point if necessary. But I think the functionality, like we've stressed, is key at this point. So we'll be back before this board anyway for a few other issues. So we're happy to address the color scheme.
Yeah, and it may come to pass that we ultimately present the opinions of the board here to Amazon, and that they may ultimately elect to not even come back in for, I don't want to, whatever how it was framed, either an appeal or another application or amended application.
Yep.
I mean, they may ultimately say, look, we got the primary things that we're looking for, which is approval of the building geometry and the functional changes, that maybe they elect to not do anything with the paint palette and just leave the building as it has also been suggested by other board members. So it's a possible thing, but I don't want to be, painted into a corner, as I said, on 200 to do anything there. If we can't get approval of color here, we certainly I don't think we're going to want to go and paint 200 either. So
thank you, Scott.
That's Dennis, just from your perspective on 200, if we go the route here and possibly approve this without painting, how do we, or can we go back to 200 and give them that option? Or
Not tonight. They would have to make an application for an amended approval, an amended plan.
And could that be handled? Yeah, I thought that would be the answer you gave. And Cheryl, from would they have to come back for that, or could that be treated as other business on the next meeting as just a minor change, or would they have to come back?
You could probably come back as an amended decision. They are scheduled to appear in front of you at your next meeting for June 4th. So you could take it up at that time as well.
So,
or you can continue this and both items, and then I can place it on the next meeting and you can make further decisions.
Well, 200.
200 would be an amendment, and
Yeah,
400 would be continued.
Correct. 200 is closed.
Right.
Okay, so we would, again, if it pleases the board, we would respectfully request that there be entered a motion for an approval to approve the functional items as submitted, potentially to approve the entrance features, including the coloration that's proposed in these two elevations here, just for the hub and the associate entrance, and that perhaps this building be entertained without any painting scheme on the facade at all. But again, I don't want to steer the motion. I mean, maybe everybody looks at it and says, ultimately, we're okay with the white. I mean, I know there were some that did not object to the coloration, so I'm going to leave that to the board. But certainly, we do not want to continue, have a continuance on this, because we do want to have some sort of approval tonight, if at all possible, so that we can move forward with the functional things that Amazon needs to happen in this building in order to start work under a building permit.
So Scott, what I'm going to do here then is I'm going to just do a quick polling of the board, make sure that we're good with a proposal similar to that, and then we can vote on that. So I just a polling of the board around this application, approving the entrance, the facade changes, including the color, the awnings, the new doors, the application as a whole, other than the painting of the CMU block from the current brown colors to the white and blue. Debbie, yes, would you be okay with that?
Yes, I approve that.
Sharon, would you be okay with that? Sharon walked away. And I'll add that, of course, the applicant has the option to come back and present either this paint plan again or a different one if they so choose. So Shirley, would you be okay with giving them that option? You're on mute. Yes, you're on mute. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe, would you be okay with that option?
Yes.
Kenyatta, would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna wait for Sharon to come back in a few seconds, and then we will make a motion here, I think. If she's not back in about a minute, we'll move on.
Well, while we wait for Sharon, to the applicants, representatives, I think Scott, and my apologies, I can't see your names.
Daniel Patrick.
Patrick, right? Daniel Patrick, sorry, Daniel and Scott. As far as the other building was, I lost count of the numbers, 200 and 400. We're on 400 now?
Yeah, we're on 400, yes.
Right, so for the 200 where the public hearing has been closed, the approval motion was second and carried, you have to make an amended application or an approval, an application for an amended approval, as Cheryl said. So make sure you do that if you're interested, because right now the buildings are not going to match, as you mentioned. So just make sure you follow up with Cheryl and submit the appropriate application, or it may just be a letter. You may have to pay an additional fee, whatever you need to do to get 200 on the agenda for an amendment. That is
Sure.
all.
Thank you.
All right. I see Sharon. Go
If
ahead,
you're
Cheryl.
interested in placing the 200 amendment onto the ACABOR meeting of June 4th, I have to know tomorrow morning early. Let me know either way.
Yeah,
Please.
I think ultimately we can move forward with obtaining building permit, performing the work, and as the work is progressing through the course of the whole construction project, honestly, the painting of the building might be one of the last things that they do.
Okay.
And as long as we're alerting their contractor, just don't paint it because we did not get approval to paint 400. It sounds to me like we have some timing. Correct me if I'm wrong. We probably just might not get certificate of occupancy or something for the building. And not to kick the can down the road, but it sounds to me like it's not germane to the function of the building. So we could ultimately come back, be it June, in June or whatever timing is appropriate to amend that application and ultimately retract that the paint coloring. So
Would it make sense to come back for 200 after we come back for 400? So instead of coming back and stripping the 200 of the approval for the painting, amending the 200 approval to match 400 once 400 is approved? Does that make sense?
No, 400 sounds like it's going to be approved with the brown, the main background color, I call it. And it sounds like we have an informal majority of the board that's in favor of 400 not being painted the majority color of white on the brown brick, but the functional elements will be painted as submitted. But 200 has been approved with the white background. That's the current status right now. I don't know if that,
but if I guess the question that Daniel was asking is, if you guys choose to come back and present another paint scheme for 400, right? If you make that choice, do you do that before you come back with an amendment of 200? I think the answer would be yes. Come back with 400 if you are going to present another painting plan, so you don't have to come back with 200 a second time. Change it,
Right.
right?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine. That's fair. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. So I will make a motion to approve this application with the condition that there is no painting of the block, either the white, the blue, or the grays, that the color changes remain to the entrances of the Amazon hub and the associate entryway only. And as well as the doors on the side that are going to be added and painted. But the block and the main facade of the building is to remain the existing brown neutral colors that it is today. Do I have a second?
I second
I'll
that.
second.
I have a second from Kenyatta, and we will do a roll call vote. Debbie?
Oh, yay.
Sharon?
Aye.
Shirley? You're on mute, Shirley.
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Kenyatta?
Aye.
And Chris? Aye. All right. So you guys are good to go on that one too. I will say I appreciate the flexibility and the openness to suggestions. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you guys for working with us, and thanks again for
Appreciate the board's
hosting this
time.
meeting.
Everybody stay safe. Okay, thank you.
You two guys. All right. Final piece of business for the evening is the Edelweiss request for other business. Is anybody from Edelweiss on? I see Edelweiss 2 here.
Yeah, I'm present.
All right. Can you state your name just for the record so that Cheryl has it? Or do you have
Yeah,
it, Cheryl?
Danny Roggins here.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Can you explain to us briefly what's the changes here and what you're asking us to review?
Yeah, so what had happened was that the architect and the surveyor made a judgment, or let's say a bad call when it came to the grading of the property. Originally, we had a sliding door, which was just supposed to have maybe 2 steps down to the patio area. Now, due to the actual grading of the property, the sliding door is much higher up. So 2 weeks ago, we had gone in for a variance in order to put in a small deck because of the height off of the floor, off the ground. We are now here just, to go over what the materials we're going to be using on the deck. To wrap everything up, due to the coronavirus and all the stuff that's been going on, everything's been postponed, and we're just looking to get the CO and wrap this thing up. So what we're looking to do is just use the same white vinyl railing that we used on the front of the house, which was approved by you guys in the beginning. And decking material, we were using just a standard 5/4 by 6 pressure treated decking. Stair treads would be the same exact thing, and the white vinyl railing would go around the deck and down the stairs to the patio. All the posts would be wrapped in a white vinyl sleeve, and all the railings would just be tied in the same way. I'm not sure if any of the board members have driven by the house and seen the white railing on the front. It would be an exact replica, same exact material, same company and everything.
So I'm going to summarize that, make sure that at least I understood it right. The request is we're adding a deck to the sliding glass door on the side of the house. The decking and framing will be pressure treated lumber. The posts will be pressure treated with a white vinyl sleeve, and the railings around the deck and on the stairs are going to be the same white vinyl that are in the front of the building. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. Given that it's only the board that's here, I will, and the applicant, I'll just ask any questions from anybody on the board around this application. All right, I'm hearing nobody. So Cheryl, do we have to do a vote on this since it's other business?
Yeah, that would be good if you did that.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the amendment as presented?
I'll approve it.
All right, so Sharon made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll approve that. I'll second it.
A second from Debbie. We'll do a roll call vote. Debbie,
Yay. Yay.
Sharon,
Yay.
Shirley,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Nyada,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So pass, you're good to go. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Chris,
Yes.
just a suggestion.
Yep.
Can I suggest when you vote, like use yeses and nos, or if you're gonna do the old fashioned nay and what is it? I thought it was I is yes and nay is no. I think I heard yay. Who was saying yay?
I think that was me, sorry.
I don't know, but it's confusing because I don't know if that's nay as in no, old fashioned no is nay. So if you're saying yay, it might be misinterpreted as nay, meaning no. So can I just make a suggestion? Bring it to the 21st century. Yes and no. Or yes and no.
You got
I leave you with that wisdom. I'm earning my salary.
We'll take it. I appreciate it. All right. Lighthearted way to end the evening.
Just having some fun, Debbie. Don't be mad at me.
Oh, good, Dennis.
Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
I make a motion to close the meeting.
And do we have a second?
I'll second it. Joe Malone.
All in favor, say yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time tonight.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Bye.